Back when I was 5 years old, it was the second year in my parents' second mom and pop shop. Just like in 1991, I was exposed to a variety of video games, and it always felt like my own virtual playground. The console wars were still underway, but my curiosity was always piqued whenever I should see a ton of games out in that massive chest. I would get acquainted with such classics as Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis, Clay Fighter, Mario Kart, Krusty's Fun House, along with tricky games such as Echo, Green Dog, Lemmings, and even Flashback 2, which were times and effort wasted due to their frustrating difficulty and sometimes a few creepy factors in each. But the one game that stuck out like a sore thumb was Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo. That awesome dragon and the sunset design was more than enough to catch my eye. I was intrigued with the photorealistic graphics and wondered if it was some Chinese fighting tournament, like in those action movies I'd watched like Big Trouble in Little China. I popped it into the console, and I'm already kind of blown away. Holy cow, I thought! The music is insane! This four-armed monster was so cool! The areas look amazing! There are dragons and statues almost everywhere! And, despite my amazement, it was also difficult. I wasn't too good on beat-em-ups. I was more of a simple platformer, and I didn't pull off special moves or fatalities well. Not even how to execute the tests of might, until someone showed me how to pull off Scorpion with a few button combos. Since then, I was able to use his deadly spear and his toasty fatality.
Scorpion wins.
And with the difficulty on easy since I was such a young noob, I was soon able to become the amateur champion. The computer wrecked me on the higher levels. Even the double matches took me a while. And I thought, despite the fact the SNES game was censored, I didn't care. Almost every night I'd have adult friends come over and play the crap out of it. Even master the things I couldn't do. Even meeting, greeting, and beating Reptile. That random green ninja was one of my favorite highlights along with the yellow one. Although, not everything was pleasant. Quite a few things gave me the creeps, and I didn't realize how cheap the AI can be. Like when you should do a trick, the other would retaliate with either Kano spin, Sub-Zero slide, or Raiden's creepy air tackle. Oh, and since I absolutely hate thunderstorms, especially when I was a wee lass, I never liked him. Not even Liu Kang with his annoying flying kicks and his irritating screeches and quickness.
Liu Kang wins.
Aside from Raiden, even Goro and Shang Tsung were also scary. Especially when I'd be caught and mashed by his forearms and jump. It was thanks to Scorpion alone that helped me through, despite having the lowest common denominator, and I was disappointed to never play as the mysterious Reptile. The pit, the palace gates, the courtyard, the warrior shrine, the throne where Shang cutely applauses, and the balcony were my faves to go back to. And the soundtrack was just top-notch with the atmosphere. Contrary to the Genesis version. Ugh! The graphics and the music were low as a sunk, ruined ship. It wasn't as livid as the Nintendo version at all. And that was pretty much it. I never encountered the comics nor the portable versions. Maybe overlooked them as they never had the same charm. The OG game was a good starting point, but it won't last. Change was on the horizon.
Ah!
2 years later, I soon randomly discovered Mortal Kombat 2, and 1994 alone was just a pivotal year. I remember being enthralled into many other things like the VR Troopers, Mutant League Football, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the random encounter of Strider, my first PC games Undersea Adventure and Mega Race. And late in that year, around the same time VR Troopers came to be, was Mortal Kombat 2. I was hooked instantly. It was definitely an improvement from its predecessor. The graphics, the gameplay, the characters, everything. Especially with the amazing environments and macabres of Outworld. Ever since Shao Kahn was the new announcer and became a staple to the series. Better than whoever they got to voice as Shang.
You will die, mortal. Round 1. Fight.
I love the newer setting of Outworld. Every stage was engaging. From the Deadpool, to the Wastelands, to the Combat Tomb, the Armory, Khan's Arena, and my personal favorites, the Living Forest and the Portal. I couldn't get enough of these. Even with the tower, holy crap, are we flying? The soundtrack was just full of jams, and the gameplay was a lot more fluent. Heck, the gore just made it all the more special, and the lethal moves were unique. The roster was nothing to snuff at either, and while it still had Scorpion, there were several other hitters such as Baraka, Melina, Kitana, Jax, and finally Reptile! When I was 7 years old, you wouldn't believe how ecstatic I was as a playable character. It felt like I was playing the AI for once. There was Shang Tsung, but I couldn't figure out how to activate his shapeshifting, nor his fireballs. Unlike Reptile's simple acid. Still though, I was no expert, and the game was a lot more tougher than I realized. I could never figure out how to encounter Jade nor Noob, nor could I pull off a stage fatality. And Kintaro was terrifying! This four-armed monster can scare and wreck you rather quickly. Also, I kinda grew addicted to that special intro one of the adults pulled off.
You weak, pathetic fool. All too easy.
Love that! Hell, even the poster was just pure eye candy! I adored the dark aesthetics of Mortal Kombat 2. This was what the series should be. And nothing can prepare you. And unprepared I was. Also, yes, there was Kung Lao, but unlike today, I wasn't too fond of him. I didn't pay attention to the profiles much in the last two games, so I figured he was a shallow cowboy of sorts, with a deadly hat in his outfit. I never knew until much later he was Chinese and a former monk, and a close partner to Liu Kang. There were more difficulties I had with this game, although the characters and setting kept me interested for a short while. I was still wrapped up in other stuff. I've tried the Genesis version, and just like the first one, it was lackluster. It was fun while it lasted. I was though a little anxious on this new action figure line coming out, but I wasn't so lucky.
Prepare yourself for combat. Mortal Kombat action figures. Fight for right in your own Tournament of Champions. Liu Kang. Johnny Cage. Raiden. Get over here. Sub-Zero. Reptile in the Dragon MK1. Kano on the Combat Cycle. Mortal Kombat. It's not just a game anymore. Mortal Kombat action figures. Combat Cycle comes with Kano. Dragon MK1 comes with Reptile.
I even remembered wearing an awesome purple tee with the wheel with Kano on the top, Scorpion and Sub-Zero at the sides, and Goro at the bottom, with the stunning huge dragon logo and the font of Mortal Kombat displayed proudly in the back. It was show and tell around 3rd grade, and I was proud on showing it off. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to stick with the series and how more user-unfriendly the games were. Until the very next year. "1995 was pinnacle like the one before it. Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 were the best games I've ever played. Ace Ventura was a cocky animal lover that stuck to me like glue. Die Hard was in its prime with its 2 sequels. The Land Before Time movies were popping out rapidly in my parents' 3rd mom-and-pop shop. Earthworm Jim made its wacky introduction on both the SNES game and his own series. Even his own figurines. An unforgettable road trip occurred. A gifted pig saved himself from being eaten. And Mortal Kombat was advertised to hit theaters. Whoa, wait a minute!
In each of us, there burns the fury of a warrior. In every generation, a few are chosen to prove it.
One of you 3 will decide the outcome of the tournament.
3 strangers will travel to the mystical realm of Outworld to defend our people against Shang Tsung.
You will die.
By the Elder Gods! I couldn't wait to see it in theaters. I was so eager and probably even begging my family to take me to it. We gotta see it! We gotta! I was for certain it was going to be better than that dull Mario movie. And it was one of the most epic moments of my life. I remembered my older sister and a group of friends took me there, even though I was younger than its demographic, and I wish I could relive them. Kano, Sonya, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Liu Kang, Raiden, Shang Tsung, Kitana, Johnny, Goro! They were all here! I was at the edge of my seat, and when I finally got it on VHS by Christmas of 2000, I watched the green soul out of it. And I was so desperate to see what happened next after the epic cliffhanger. So too, this was when my support for the power couple Liu and Kitana all started. I've always wanted them to be together, even when it was briefly shown in later titles. But little did I know, the Mortal Kombat menace wasn't over yet.
Well done.
Mortal Kombat 3 came to be, and since then it became as my all-time favorite. Sure, there was the limited roster, even though they could have done more since Super Metroid stretched the SNES to its limits. And Scorpion wasn't in it. But that never bothered me. Just like with MK2, the atmosphere, characters, music, and everything in between was too much fun. I loved the Cyber Sector and Cyrax. Sindel, Shiva, Cabal, the ability to unlock Smoke, Shao Kahn, and Motaro via cheat codes. And of course, my personal favorite,
Nightwolf.
hell yes! Ever since my fascinations with Native Customs, I couldn't get enough of him. Everything about him was just addictive, especially when someone unleashed his animality.
Nightwolf wins. Flawless victory. Animality.
I absolutely adore the soundtrack, for the most part. I love the majority of the levels, such as the balcony, subway, the creepy soul chamber, the phenomenal church, and especially the scary Pit 3. I still wasn't able to pull off a fatality, but I soon was overloaded by fear and fascination once I saw this.
Flawless victory. Fatality.
The fear factor just jumped up to 11 once I witnessed the most horrifying mini-boss Midway ever concocted, Motaro. By the Elder Gods! He is destructive, I can never beat him, and he just gave me nightmares. Goro was a bit on the scary side, Kintaro was a step up, but Motaro just skyrocketed. He's brutal, takes up over half the balcony, and is extremely hard that he even made my creepiest enemies and favorite villains list. But don't get me started with Shao Kahn combined with his fatal warhammer, his constant charges, and the terrifying pits. I saw someone beat the game once, but I wished we could have brought Khan to the slaughtering fans.
No.
Nightwolf wasn't too far behind with tribal characters. Both he and Motaro became my topmost favorite characters in all of Mortal Kombat. And my imagination went wild. Once we got cheat codes, I used Motaro a lot, and fantasized him on being a Jurassic Park plushie. There was this classic party mixtape featuring hits such as The Bomb, Scatman, Tonight is the Night, the long version of the Macarena, etc., that they just became synonymous. Seriously, this game impacted my life so damn much that no other game can possibly replicate its dark futuristic setting. It's criminally underrated, and another certain game never scratched the surface. But I'll get to that when I get to that. Overall, Mortal Kombat 3 was an unstoppable force, and I wish people would appreciate it more. "1996 was an okay year. The Beanie Babies craze was going on, and it was definitely a compelling hobby, collecting all the interesting plushies the year had to offer. I remember having a few of them back in Christmas of 1995, particularly Sly and Spike. And from there, foxes and rhinos became two of some of my favorite animals. I even had a catalog for all the upcoming beanies. There was a McDonald's commercial showcasing the Teeny Babies. The Twistazoids were also a thing, and I managed to have the main trio. The WB action-packed movie Twister I saw in theaters was a bit much, although my dad enjoyed the heck out of that. Then, tragedy struck as I noticed that the VR Troopers no longer aired at 5:30 during weeknights on Philly 57. I was so upset that one of my favorite beloved shows unexpectedly bit the dust. But soon after that, the N64 finally hit international shores, and I finally got it with 3 games, those being Super Mario 64, Wave Race 64, and believe it or not, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. And I somehow never bothered to play it. I missed out on a gold mine since all 3 games were on one cartridge, and it wasn't till several years later I noticed you can play as everyone, including all the bosses. To this day, I can never understand why I missed out on something special. Perhaps it was when I had the Preview channel, which was a network that scrolls through the channel listings 24/7. There were none of the TV listings we can scroll on our own. And one day, I stumbled upon another underappreciated classic I still hold dear.
Since the dawn of time, the realm of Earth has been sought by forces of evil. Now,
Mortal Kombat begins again.
Mortal Kombat.
We're under attack. Let's do it!
Combat time!
All new, all USA.
Mortal Kombat continues.
Mortal Kombat, Defenders of the Realm. Saturdays only on USA Network.
I couldn't wait to see it! Mortal Kombat has its own animated series! Just like Super Mario and Captain N did so long ago! I really needed to make time for this. Every Saturday morning at 10:30, I needed to see USA's own animated block. Sure, there were other things like Double Dragon, Street Fighter, and Wing Commander Academy at the time. It later acquired other game series, but I was always glued to this one. I grew so attached to that series, and I watched it religiously. I noticed it was set in between MK2 and 3, and it had the beloved characters including Nightwolf, who was a tech geek and shaman who owned a pet wolf named Kiba. I adore them both. It was also ideal as I learned about other combatants, like Sub-Zero hiding away from the Lin Kuei, and how it became corrupt converting people into robots, or about Sonya's vengeance over Kano, or Cabal's disabilities and defection from the Black Dragons, or other canon immigrants like Oniro, Ruby, and the one I truly despise to this very day, Quan Chi! And there was one I really liked, the esteemed Edenian Knight, Asgarth. And he's never been brought up again after 27 years! The thing was, no one liked this series like I did, with its neat soundtrack, spiffy cast including the late Luke Perry, and interesting episodes. Sadly, it ended before Christmas with 13 episodes.
And it just fucking pissed me off and ruined my whole goddamn weekend!
I always blamed the N64 for this, and my imagination just went off the wall. Yup, by the way, that was my entire fantasy roster. The original Sonic Trio, the 3 Twistazoids, the Dinos from the Land Before Time, Bowser, the Toadies, and the Koopalings, the Pets and Strays from Homeward Bound, the 101 Dalmatians, the Yoshis, and a Croc Prize plushie I named Tuffy, which I pretended was an Ankylosaurus. And I had a self-insert I named Crackle, who became significant later. Nevertheless, I felt it was tragic that two beloved shows got canceled on the same year. And I found nothing wrong with it. I loved most of the characters and the actors. I didn't mind the Dragon Jets. I even thought naively that Luke Perry was John Mellencamp who sang Just Another Day. I know, it was wrong, but that was before the internet. And I was still a space cadet. Heck, I recall looking up the TV guide which listed that show at 5 a.m. I had to record them, even though I learned how to do it a year later. Even to this day, I find Defenders of the Realm to be the most underrated installment in the entire Juggernaut. But luck was on my side, as I found out on everyone's hated movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Shao Kahn, Emperor of Outworld.
The Earth was created in 6 days, so too shall it be destroyed!
At the time, I was grateful I had the chance to see it in theaters, with my old sis and a few friends again. And while all fans thought it was atrocious, it has its moments. The casting was off, Johnny was killed in the first 10 minutes, Smoke wasn't friends with Sub-Zero, Jade wasn't loyal to Kitana, the action was bad, whatever. I never cared of its many flaws. Jade was too ambiguous, so I kind of took it as face value. I was disappointed Cage was slain, and only Liu and Kitana's actors stayed. Still, I never let the negativities get to me, and ever since then, it was always a guilty pleasure. More importantly, I felt it was just the closure I needed, and some of the songs were bangers. I even repeated the same 3 words defending those like Shiva, Khan, Sindel, Sonya, and Jax. I was actually relieved as I'd finally move on to other things I was into. Until Mortal Kombat 4! I soon discovered it the same way as the other games, at my parents' shop with the N64 cartridge only. And I was reluctant. Everything about this game was so uninspiring. It never felt like the games of old. The quality suffered. Shinnok and the new faces were just there. There's no Nightwolf nor cyborgs. And for hours I tried and I couldn't get far at all. It was too hard. And I grew sick of falling down that accursed spiky well. That was when I had my first fallout. I never cared too much when I randomly saw Mortal Kombat Conquest, as I felt it was just a Hercules and Xena clone. And I was completely lost. Raiden wasn't the same, and aside from him, I never recognized anyone. I never knew about the Great Kung Lao, nor the fact the current Kung Lao ever had an ancestor. With the despair I had suffered from, I just stopped following Mortal Kombat. I never grew up in the 3D era like so many consumers. I never noticed Deadly Alliance nor Liu Kang's death. I never seen Deception nor the new Conquest. And, well, I saw the commercial for Armageddon, but with everyone gone, what was the use? It was heart-wrenching to see everyone go, and my mind just thought it was time to move on. to give up on all the characters I used to cherish both in and out. I too saw the commercial for Shaolin Monks, but I never got the chance to try it. I had a difficult life once my stepmom came to be. And for the next 17 years, I was on hiatus. It wasn't until 2015 that I willingly tried the reboot. I heard once it was a return to form, and it'd be like the classic trilogy. I said like, not is. So I slowly but surely watched a playthrough on YouTube, and it was never like the OG series at all! Iconic stages were cut. Some of the combatants had worse portrayals and making horrible decisions. And again, like Armageddon, beloved characters bit the dust.
C-rated? Earthwell is free.
Kung Lao! Why couldn't I have those games when I was a kid? God damn it, I was born too fucking early.
And I was born early. I was born in the late 80s and discovered the first title when I was 5. And MK4 got me derailed once I was 10. Then I still pushed forward and...
Still alive? No matter.
Silla, hoist the cielo. On my piece. Where the gods? No!
Have killed us.
That made me rage quit a second time. Only for a little while cause I heard of MKX. The 10th entry which seemed to be a lousy rehash of MK4. The same game I dropped out on. And it's 10 times worse.
Praise be to Lord Shinnok.
That's it. I'm seeing red. I'm gonna beat this fucker right now.
All my favorite combatants are undead evil soldiers. There's no hope bringing them back. They never tried. The realms are shambles. Oh, by the Elder Gods, how can they fuck up so much? What was fucking NetherRealm thinking? It's turned this series literally into hell. I wish Midway and John Tobias was back. That's it. I wish Midway and John Tobias was back. That's it. I'm abandoning ship. Mortal Kombat is the worst series ever. This is garbage. That was my third Fallout. I remembered staring vacantly at the computer screen, just in utter despair. In both rehashes, my heart sunk like the Titanic. I completely just gave up. My hopes for Mortal Kombat were dead.
Games. And in all those years, this one takes the cake. I think I've finally hit the bottom of the barrel. I failed. I've done everything I can. It's time to retire. one more, for all time's sake.
Yeah. Cut to 2021, Mortal Kombat 11 and Aftermath had already been released. And Kronika and Fire God Liu Kang were a thing. But coincidentally, it was 1 week before the release of the Mortal Kombat film that my mind registered there's still one more game I have yet to try: Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. I saw a Let's Play featuring Kung Lao and...
A battle raged at the end of the first tournament. The forces of Earthrealm were facing their greatest challenge.
Mortal Kombat!
Oh my God! They did it! They pulled through! Oh my God! They did it! They made a game! That's not shit! I found the gold at the end of the rainbow. Oh, maybe it's not gold, maybe it's bronze or something, but they made a game! It's not shit! It's not shit!
Thank you, Paradox Games! You're the ones who know how to make a Mortal Kombat game right! I'm not saying this game's perfect, but through my last ounce of curiosity, it brought me hope. From April 2021 to March 2022, it was decided. Shaolin Monks brought me back to the series. It made me a Kung Lao fan, and I love him as much as I do Nightwolf. And above all, it made me decide to write my own fanfic series from its ending. In March of 2022, it was officially decided to create my own fanfiction series. I'd already done other franchises like Sleepy Hollow, the classic Final Fantasy, and F-Zero, so this would be the next series to tackle. I even binge-watched Defenders of the Realm during the summer of 2021 while the Let's Play was still going on. Little by little, I made some friends along the way, and I developed my own OC, Ico Crackle, based on my own self-insert as a kid and through my experience. I made the alternate timeline her dystopian future after she left the team. Kung Lao was abused so many times by the developers that I decided to make him and Ico a couple. And I have no regrets. I soon wanted to tackle the entire classic timeline, and I continued my series with Mortal Kombat Gold. I was lucky there were other options that were inaccessible at the time. I was finally entering uncharted territory, and many fans helped me on this tumultuous journey. Whether it be Mortal Kombat 4, Deadly Alliance, Deception, and finally to Armageddon. By the time I was done, I felt like I've achieved a major feat, and never felt more proud. And it'll occasionally be shown on a countdown or two. Sure, there were some major fallouts. I encountered MK11 in Aftermath, which had its ups and downs. MK Onslaught was a thing. And I lost several friends, even when stressful life got in the way. I thought that role-playing was one of the worst hobbies ever. I really thought MK1 was just as atrocious as those other low-class schemes. And that brings us to today. While I did have a fourth Fallout with the MK series, I'm not planning on abandoning it. I mean it. It was all thanks to those hurdles I managed to go over, the loyal fans that encouraged and supported me, including the role players I have left, even to one I hold so close. These past 31 years involving Mortal Kombat has always been about trials and tribulations. It provided challenges to overcome. It made some endearing and unpleasant memories. It fell at times, but it tests the times.
The essence of Mortal Kombat is not about death, but life.
It is indeed a franchise, a cash cow that'll keep growing, but so would the memories and experiences we gain, good or bad. I'm not planning on leaving the series as long as the fans and friends keep us together in dire times. We must not lose hope. Hold on to the precious few, the chosen ones that inspire us and motivate us to keep going in life, and above all, to always keep fighting.
Each realm must choose its own destiny. Whatever those choices, we will face them together.